Pump it up, pump it up.
Trae.
Come on, come on.
With Trae.
Pump it up, pump it up.
It's the day with
This is the day to gain inspiration, to make a positive change in the nation. We're inviting you to partake in conversation, to raise your vibration. It's the day that we will all celebrate all of our peeps that make this thing elevate. Watch the negative fade away, cause it's the day with Trae.
Grand Rising, everyone. Welcome to the Day with Trae. I'm your host, Trae Holiday. I get to welcome you to a magnificent Monday. Of course, it's another Menopause Monday. We got our Menopause Mentor in the building, Danyale Thomas. I'm going to start with her. You know, every time she's here, we're learning something more about menopause, so I'm so glad she's here. And later on in the show, we got Tiffany Townsend, Seattle Opera's resident artist, who's here to talk about her debut coming up for Jubilee. So I'm so excited to talk to her about her experience with Seattle Opera. But y'all know it's the top of the show, so I get to talk to you right now about your experience right here on the Day with Trae. If you're enjoying this experience, this is the perfect time for you to tag and share this show right here. Go ahead and share it with folks who you feel could benefit from the daily dose of dopeness we work to give you here on the Day with Trae. And if you can't watch our TV show, we still have you covered. You can always listen to us anywhere you find your favorite podcast. Just search Converge Media Network and the Day with Trae. You'll find me wherever your favorite shows are popping up. There's lots of different platforms. Search for us, you'll find us there. Well, up first and up next, we got Danyale Thomas, our menopause mentor, back in the Black Media Matter studios. Hi.
Hey.
How are you?
Oh, I'm always good.
It's always good to be here with you. And honestly, I got to tell you, like, I'm trying to figure out where I'm at on this perimenopausal scale. What you got for us today? There's so much to always dive into.
Today, I want to talk about sexual health in menopause. You know, I like having conversations that people don't usually have. So I'm not shy to talk about the things that come up and to put it in perspective for women of the things that they need to be aware of that are going to be coming up during this time in their lives, so they can address them and still have the pleasure they deserve.
Yeah. I mean, there's some changes that are happening biologically, which I'm sure there's like some other things that are going on when it comes to sexual health. What are some of those changes that are happening for women during this time?
So, you know, we've talked about the mental, emotional changes that happen as estrogen changes in our body. And then the physical aspect of that is vaginal dryness. Just not being in the mood for sex like we might have been before. And so one of the things is to be aware that those changes are going to occur and how we can address them before they actually happen. So if we have a steady partner, someone who that we need to be feeling comfortable enough to say, this is what's going on, so that we can have those conversations that will allow for us to be better expressed during those times.
Wow. I mean, so it really is a multitude of things happening, because we've been talking about how important it is. Any partners of those who are going through menopause understand kind of their role in this, right? And so much of this is about kind of acceptance of the process, but also how to support moving forward. When you think about how that translates into sexual health, what are some of those things that come to mind for you?
Well, you know, in Mainstream Menopause, the Facebook group where we have all these conversations and we're giving support to one another, one of the things that are coming up is that we're trying to get to this sweet spot of all the symptoms being gone. And that doesn't quite happen. Like perimenopause can span anywhere from 7 to 10 years. And that's that weird fluctuation time where your estrogen is going up and it's coming down, where you might not have a period for a long period of time, or you might have a period for a long period of time, right? And so within that time frame, what we're having conversations about is that you could miss a period for 4 to 6 months and still be able to have a child. So don't be thinking that you could just show up in sex without being protected, right? And so I looked it up. The Guinness World Record says that the oldest woman to have a come pregnant naturally is 59.
Wow.
Right? And so within that pleasure aspect, it's also being responsible for our bodies in that way, right? Being really conscious about what we want in our lives and being able to advocate for ourselves. So the types of conversations that are coming up are, at what point do we get to menopause where we are unable to have a child anymore, right? And what we need to do to address that in how we're communicating with our partners, but how we are assessing our needs and how we show up for ourselves.
You know, it's one of those things that I think is so vital too, because uh, there's this misnomer here, you know, like you're going through menopause. So like, yeah, like my childbearing years are behind me.
Mhm.
And yet, you know, we have those instances. I just saw something come across my feed recently of a 57-year-old who was like, you know, found out she was like 4 to 6 months pregnant and was like, wait a minute, what? I just thought I was like having, you know, no period, like that. I'm in menopause, like I shouldn't. And it's interesting because, you know, that's not discussed enough. And so I know mainstream menopause and all the folks who are tapping in there really appreciate these discussions. When we think about things that can be done, right? We're talking about vaginal dryness. There's obviously some type of maybe more natural or herbal type of things that can happen. What are some of those ways that folks are finding relief in those areas?
So, you know, always refer to your physician. That's where you should be going first. But there are a lot of products that are either suppository or that you can take orally that can address vaginal dryness, because it can be really painful to have sex during that time too, because the lining of the vagina starts to become really thin. So being aware that starting with your physician, so I saw that same post with a woman 57, right? And she's in tears. There is the possibility of getting a false positive, right, when you take a pregnancy test. So again, women being hypervigilant about discussing with their physicians what's going on, because just because you think that haven't had a period for a year, you need to address that with your doctor and see if you're really in menopause and unable to have a child.
So, I mean, this is why the medical side of all of this is so important and key. There's, you know, of course, the things that you're experiencing physically, but if you don't get the checks, if you don't know exactly what's going on, you're, you know, self-diagnosing, which I think we do more of now that we have access to so much technology.
We do. The fact that you can take a test at home, right? Like that's just what's been in the last 20 years. So we used to have to go to our physician for everything. So now what we don't realize is that it's the HCG coming from our pituitary gland that is really saying whether or not we're pregnant, right? And that can be elevated or can decline based on our estrogen levels. So if your estrogen is fluctuating because you are in perimenopause, then you can't really trust too much of anything that you're doing on your own.
Oh my goodness.
I know.
There's a lot to this.
There is.
Of course. And, you know, as always, if folks are trying to connect more, maybe have that community where these kind of topics can be discussed, let folks know how they tap into mainstreaming menopause right here.
Join us on Facebook in the Mainstreaming Menopause group. Just go ahead and join. We're having so many great conversations, support, women really talking about what has helped them, and hopefully you can find out what helps you.
Always a pleasure. Thanks so much for being here, Danyale.
Thank you.
Wow. You know, when we think about menopause, who knew that there were so many different ways to dive into this topic? So huge shout out to our menopause mentor for being here and giving us some guidance in this area. We get to actually shift our topic. And up next, we got Tiffany Townsend coming on to tell us more about Seattle Opera and her being the resident artist. Y'all don't definitely want to miss this. Stay tuned. You're watching The Day with Trae.
Africatown Plaza is our latest affordable housing development project. It's 126 units of affordable housing over community commercial space.
It's the first time in my career, and I've been doing this for 10 years, that I was able to design for people who look like me.
Africatown Plaza is a beacon of hope.
Africatown Plaza is a love letter to the community.
Disenrollment is a situation whereby people whose birthright to be indigenous is being stolen from them by politicians that have been elected to lead.
Today, the latest or last chapter of the saga concerns the threatened physical ejectment of as many as 21 Nooksack families from their homes.
I think it come about by hatred for our family. That's what it's all about.
Our bloodline is still here. You know, they can't get rid of us.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Day with Trae. I'm your host, Trae Holiday. Joining me right now is Tiffany Townsend. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Good.
Well, first off, I get to talk about your background a little bit because, you know, every time I get to sit down with someone from the opera, there's always, it's interesting to hear this wide, diverse ways that people get into opera. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Funny. I'm Tiffany Townsend, soprano, by the way, and I'm from Jackson, Mississippi. And I got into an opera, the funny story. So I'm a pianist. I was a pianist and I started playing classical piano at 7. And I finished that all the way up until college. And so I also had a side job as a gospel musician. And so a voice teacher heard me. I had finished practicing my classical music and I was practicing for this gospel musician job. And I was just like going ham on some gospel in the practice room. And a voice teacher heard me singing and he was like, he came in and knocked and said, you should take voice lessons. And I was like, am I that bad? And so I started taking voice lessons from him and we found an operatic voice. And here, 10 years later, I switched and I'm loving it and I still do it. So,
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So then going from the lessons to on stage in the opera, what did that transition look like for you?
It's interesting because as a pianist, you really don't get to see the audience as well because you're like kind of focused on your hands and the piano. And so I stopped and then had to get up and actually face the audience and get live feedback from them. And so it was a different like change, but it was like kind of nice because singing for live people and then seeing the joy on their faces is great. As a pianist, you're just like, you're hoping they're enjoying it. Whereas as a singer, you can see live and get that live feedback. And it's just really cool. So,
well, the great thing about opera too is that there's opera houses all over. Tell us a bit about the ways that you've been able to explore. You're here in Seattle now.
Oh my gosh.
Resident artist. Was there an opera house in Mississippi? Tell us a bit about that transition and you being able to touch different stages.
Enough, like the opera house in Mississippi is it was Mississippi Opera when I was younger, and now it's Opera Mississippi, I think. Interestingly enough, I wasn't really involved with the Mississippi Opera like that because I was still a pianist, but I had attended a lot of the shows because music is music in Mississippi and you have to pretty much attend the symphony, the opera, and do all of that stuff. So I went to a lot of their operas, but I was like, I will never be an opera singer, so I'm not going to get too involved in that. I really didn't get involved in opera until I left Mississippi. And then I went to New York where I went to Juilliard for my master's. And I don't know if you know, but Juilliard and the Metropolitan Opera in New York is right next door to each other. And so I went to all of the shows there and really fell in love with it. And then I went to the Curtis Institute of Music in Philadelphia, and down the street from there is Opera Philadelphia. Opera Philadelphia is a great company, and also I then went and was a young artist at LA Opera. So I'm coming from LA, and now I'm here in Seattle, and they're all different and all wonderful, and all have, I say, raised me in opera and allowed me to do this. So this is great.
Well, it's beautiful because such a wide plethora of experience in the time that you've been doing opera says a lot about your talent and you being able to gain all of these things from different places. Now you're here in Seattle. And one thing I really appreciate, and I've heard from other opera singers too, Seattle has this real intentionality to diversify the stage. And I just want to talk to you a little bit about that because I think it's really important for the audience to understand opera's for everyone.
Yes.
Right? We're really, this partnership I have with Seattle Opera is like, let's debunk this myth that, you know, you have to be at some status or it's only for rich white folks or whatever.
No.
Like it's not. Tell us a bit about your experience as a Seattle resident artist.
It's interesting where we're going back for, like, most people think that opera is this white folk elitist art form, and they don't realize that back in the day when opera started, opera was pop music. And so everybody was coming to the opera and they were eating and talking and gossiping and doing everything with opera. So I don't think we need to break down this like opera's not relatable, because every opera that we put on, pretty much you can relate to it and somehow in some way. And me being a resident artist here, this is my first year, and this is my second month, quite honestly, in Seattle, is amazing. I think is really amazing because they're not just, Seattle Opera specifically is not just one of those companies that are doing, like, putting out the statements. They're actually doing the work. And I think it's amazing as a resident artist here. Putting on Jubilee, we'll talk about Jubilee, but I think putting on a show like Jubilee is so incredible because we've never seen it before. So that's amazing.
Well, yeah, I mean, when I saw that, I'm like, oh my gosh, world premiere. Now, I promise you, as connected as I am, I did not realize that, right? And so I just love the understanding that it reminds me it's still a new age art form. The ideas that, you know, only Wagner, now Josh knows I love some Wagner. I became a fan, but like those older operas, people think that that's all that they're going to see.
No.
So tell us a bit about Jubilee, this world premiere. You're a part of this and it's phenomenal. But it's really going back, I think, to a lot of the kind of Christian roots and the gospel roots even that you were just talking about for you. Tell us a bit about what folks can kind of expect with Jubilee.
So Jubilee is basically an opera. It was started as a musical a couple of years ago, but this will be the world premiere as an opera. It follows 13 singers, 13 Jubilee, as the Jubilee Fisk singers, or the Fisk Jubilee singers, which were students in Fisk University. And they were going around, and it follows them on their first couple of tours around the world, a pivotal performance for Queen Victoria. Not long after the emancipation and not long after the end of the Civil War, it just follows 13 singers on their journeys as they both spread music across the world and also raise money for Fisk University.
Wow. I mean, you know, for me, I think people have been seeing some of the things that Seattle Opera's been putting out, seeing some of the, you know, like I saw a 4-part, you know, harmony. I'm like, oh, okay, we're getting ourselves prepared. Tell us a bit about your experience in really opening up the doors, because I think Jubilee, Malcolm X, Blue, there was these amazing shows that really were rooted in kind of more of a Black experience, so to speak, but they spoke to wider audiences because of that, right? Because you need to be able to sometimes see yourself on stage, your lived experience being reflected in the story being told. So tell us a bit about how it's been, because I know there's going to be some other things that we do leading up to Jubilee, but it's the intentionality again for me that I get to see. How are you experiencing that?
It's quite amazing. I mean, 13 people. I get to see some of my friends that I also know, but haven't seen in a couple of years, and be in a show with them, and often, because oftentimes you're the only Black person in the room. This time it'll be all Black people in the room, and it's incredible. I don't think I've ever been in a show like that. So that's an experience in its own. But also, the opera is comprised of 40 spirituals, and most of these spirituals you've heard. Like, you might not know the arrangements, but you've heard these songs, stuff like Standing in the Need of Prayer and Wade in the Water, and all these different things that you know gospel wise, but like you've never heard them sung like in 4-part harmony with like an ensemble that's going to be amazing. I think it's going to be great.
Well, I know there's a lot of folks getting very stoked about this. It's one of those things that it allows people to dress up, have a fun time out. But this is also a good show that I hear is going to be good for families. And sometimes the story can get pretty dark and they're like, okay, maybe not the young kids, but this is about joy. This is about a lot of different things. So what can the audience expect when they come?
The audience can just expect the little snapshots of 13 people, sharing their love for music and heartbreak and hope, big hope. And their lives, really, I think, and it's a good story that I think all of us should understand and know, because it's a part of our history.
Well, this is sounding amazing already, Tiffany. Before I let you go, though, I want to talk a bit about you being the resident artist, because that actually means you're going to be with us for some time.
A year, yes.
Yeah, exactly. What are some of the things you're really looking forward to?
Oh my gosh! So like I said, it's the second month. My first project here was we just did Pagliacci, and my first project was covering Nenta, and wow, what an incredible thing. Being a resident artist, it just started, but I've already been so busy, and it's just really incredible for them to really, and they really believe in me as an artist, and that's kind of rare. And so for them to pick me for this position has been kind of really amazing, especially my emerging as an artist in this career. So.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing more of you, Tiffany. I will definitely be at the shows, and I'm looking forward to seeing you as the resident artist alongside others. Of course, if people are trying to tap in, they can go to seattleopera.org. But I want to give you the opportunity, because maybe people want to follow you in your journey. Look right there and let them know how they do that.
Right here?
Right here.
Right here. I'm TiffanyTownsendSoprano.com. You can follow me on Instagram at Tiffany Townsend Soprano. There you go.
There it is. Tiffany, thanks so much for being with me today.
Thank you.
Really a pleasure.
Thank you.
Wow, y'all. Now, see, this is what I'm talking about. I was just saying that it's so great to be connected with these amazing artist institutions that we have here in the Seattle greater metro area. So huge shout out to Seattle Opera for always being intentional to make sure we have an open door to what's going on over there. And you definitely want to get your tickets to Jubilee. You want to stay engaged and involved with Seattle Opera. As Tiffany said, these shows are for everyone, and they started as the pop music back in its day. So let's bring ourselves back to it and help to beef it up, because honestly, it's open for everyone. Y'all, I'm gonna wrap all of this up right after this short break. You're watching The Day with Trae.
I learned about the ANU program through many different community organizations. The program, they're very good at making sure that you meet the right people. My favorite part would have to be the community building and also the volunteer opportunities as well. I've been working on my physical health a lot more. I've been intentional about that, and they're very big on that. I'm still learning how transformational it is because there's just so much opportunity. It's a great program, and they will support you.
Visit the link at the end of this video to learn more.
Seattle Opera presents the world premiere of Jubilee. Jubilee follows the historic Fisk Jubilee Singers' initial tours following the Civil War. While raising funds for the fledgling Fisk University, the group shared their music around the world, showcasing more than 40 African-American spirituals such as Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, Deep River, and Wade in the Water. Jubilee is not to be missed. October 12th through 26th at McCaw Hall. Details at seattleopera.org.
Here on Back to Vesa, it's always been important to me that we uplift stories from across the region, and that no matter where you live in the nation, you never have to miss a moment of the show as we continue to highlight the beauty, excellence, and resilience of our communities across the Pacific Northwest. Why? Because representation matters. So no matter where you live, be it the Central District or Centralia, Portland or Pullman, or anywhere across the country, I encourage you to join me on this Back to Vesa journey by downloading the free Fox Local app on your phone or smart TV as we continue to elevate the very best in our communities.
Welcome back, y'all, to The Day with Trae. I'm your host, Trae Holiday. Huge shout out to my guest today, Danyale Thomas, our menopause mentor, and Tiffany Townsend. Now, I'll say that it's so great to be able to have this connection with Seattle Opera, and also so great to be able to utilize this platform to talk about a topic that often is not discussed. And ultimately, it's important for us to be able to have the space to share what is happening to millions of women in the world, billions of women in the world. Menopause is one of those topics that just doesn't get enough shine. And I've learned so much by having Danyale on. So I'm always appreciative that she can be with us. And, you know, when we get our glimpse of the art world and what's going on there, it's always a pleasure for me and such a treasure for me to dive into, because I'm looking forward to seeing Jubilee, but also I love learning more about the folks who are on the stage And we got to hear about Tiffany Townsend, who's going to be here in Seattle for a year. So I'm encouraging you, get involved, get engaged with Seattle Opera. It's so great to be able to understand, like, these people are just like us. And the fact that opera has felt closed off, that's the truth. It's felt closed off for a lot of people. But Seattle Opera is saying, please come, please enjoy. Let's have opportunities for young folks, for our elders, for those who have never been able to experience this to come and experience it. And Jubilee is a great first opera for those of you out there who have never gone. This may be the one that is like music, it may be, some great, amazing ensembles. This is what you might want to just get your tickets now. I'm just going to tell you because, to have something that can be anchoring for you when it's your first time, that's what it was for me with Blue. Blue was like the first all-Black opera that I ever knew about, and it was the beginning of my relationship with Seattle Opera. And do you know, the same person who wrote Blue wrote Jubilee. So I'm just going to give you that little nugget. Definitely get your tickets today. And thank you for starting your week off with me. Y'all know I'll be back until tomorrow at 11 a.m. Peace. Converge Media produces culturally relevant content for Black and urban audiences. Our coverage is raw, transparent, and objective, praised by community leaders, government officials, and residents. Support Converge Media today via Venmo, Cash App, or PayPal at Converge Media.